Hi, welcome to today's Piece of Peace. Again, we start each of our sessions just with grabbing our mindset, putting it into a mindset of gratitude with everything happening in our world today and how negative and how divided everything is. It's good to allow our minds to be on something that is filled with gratitude, peace, thankfulness. And I woke up this morning and my first gratitude was just recollecting what I was doing 28 years ago when my second child was being born today. Thanking God for my son and what an incredible gift he is to this world and to me. And then thanking him for a family night last night and my oldest son's new acquaintance, more so new, very important, dear friend. And it was just delightful to watch his joy with her and hers with him. Listening to my boys and their significant relationship others just laugh and share stories on our deck. That was a delight to my heart. I've been praying since my boys have been very little for their girlfriends, for their future brides, and that each of them would just really and thoroughly enjoy each other and have unity and peace amongst them, and just often prayed that my boys would find girls that loved Jesus more than they loved my boys, but that they adored and respected and honored my boys, and that my boys would love them like Christ loved the church. Been praying that for a long time, and to see 3 of my 4 on our deck last night, and all of them telling stories and all of them laughing and enjoying each other's company was absolute delight to my heart. And even that all these 3 dollies that may have known each other or just getting to know each other, that they enjoyed each other is really pleasing and peaceful and an answer to prayer. And I loved that. Listening to my boys and their dollies laugh and share stories on the deck, that all of these dear women get along with each other. It was so sweet. And there was unity, peace, and joy. And my gratitude for family is just so deep. My gratitude for grace and forgiveness, my gratitude for peace and for joy, for God's provisions in our jobs and in our health, and of course my gratitude for Jesus, really big. And as I sat there with my gratitude, God brought me in then to 1 Samuel, which is where our devotion is today, written by Dixon. She titles it God's Mercy at Work. And we're going to start in 1 Samuel chapter 24. It brings us 1 through 10 in the devotion, but I thought very necessary to complete the chapter, which brings us to verse 22. So it's titled in my Bible, David Spares Saul's Life. Let's jump in here. After Saul returned from pursuing the Philistines, he was told David is in the desert of Engedi. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. So Saul took 3,000 chosen men from all Israel and set out to look for David and his men near the crags of the wild goats. And he came to the sheep's pen along the way. A cave was there, and Saul went in to relieve himself. David and his men were far back in the cave. The men said, "This is the day the Lord spoke of when he said to you, I will give your enemy into your hands for you to deal with as you wish." Then David crept up unnoticed and cut off the corner of Saul's robe. After, David was conscience-stricken for having cut off the corner of his robe. And he said to his men, "The Lord forbid that I should do such a thing to my master, the Lord's anointed, or lift my hand against him, for he is the anointed of the Lord." With these words, David rebuked his men and did not allow them to attack Saul. And Saul left the cave and went his way. Then David went out of the cave and called to Saul, "My lord, the king, When Saul looked behind him, David bowed down, prostrated himself with his face to the ground, and said to Saul, "Why do you listen when men say David is bent on harming you? This day you have seen with your own eyes how the Lord delivered you into my hands in the cave. Some urged me to kill you, but I spared you. I said, I will not lift my hand against my master, because he is the Lord's anointed. See, my father, look at this piece of your robe in my hand. I cut it off the corner of your robe, but did not kill you. Now understand and recognize that I am not guilty of wrongdoing or rebellion. I have not wronged you, but you are hunting me down to take my life. May the Lord judge between you and me, and may the Lord avenge the wrongs you have done to me. But my hands will not touch you. As the old saying goes, from evil doers will come evil deeds, so my hand will not touch you. Against whom has the king of Israel come out? Whom are you pursuing? A dead dog, a flea? May the Lord be our judge and decide between us. May he consider my case and uphold it. May he vindicate me by delivering me from your hand." When David finished saying this, Saul asked, "Is that your voice, David, my son?" And he wept out loud. "You are more righteous than I," he said. "You have treated me well, but I have treated you badly. You have just now told me of the good you did to me. The Lord delivered me into your hands, but you did not kill me. When a man finds his enemy, does he let him get away unharmed? May the Lord reward you well for the way you treated me today. I know that you will surely be king, and that the kingdom of Israel will be established in your hands. Now swear to me by the Lord that you will not cut off my descendants or wipe out my name from my father's family." So David gave his oath to Saul. Then Saul returned home, but David and his men went up to the stronghold. Dixon writes, she calls the devotion God's Mercy at Work. My anger percolated when a woman mistreated me, blamed me, and gossiped about me. I wanted everyone to know what she had done, wanted her to suffer as I had suffered because of her behavior. I steamed with resentment until a headache pierced my temples. But as I began praying for my pain to go away, the Holy Spirit convicted me. How could I plot revenge while begging God for relief? If I believed He would care for me, why wouldn't I trust Him to handle the situation? Knowing that people who are hurting often hurt other people, I asked God to help me forgive the woman and work toward reconciliation. The psalmist David understood the difficulty of trusting God while enduring unfair treatment. Though David did his best to be a loving servant, King Saul succumbed to jealousy and wanted to murder him. David suffered while God worked things out and prepared him to take the throne, but still he chose to honor God instead of seeking revenge. He did his part to reconcile with Saul and left the results to God's hands. When it seems others are getting away with wrongdoing, we struggle with the injustice. But with God's mercy at work in our hearts and the hearts of others, we can forgive as He's forgiven us and receive the blessing He's prepared for us. Dixon's charge to us is this: how can trusting that God is perfect, loving, good, and in control help you when sin seems to be prevailing? Who do you need to forgive and place in God's mighty and merciful hands? And her prayer was this: Merciful God, please help me trust you to determine how justice prevails. Have you ever been wronged, betrayed? I think I've been in the same place where how could I plot revenge while begging for God's relief, And seeing that How can trusting that God is perfect, loving, good, and in control help you when sin seems to be prevailing? It felt like injustice was prevailing in my life. And I could ruminate in my thought patterns how I was going to, what I wanted to do, or have these false conversations with people that were never going to happen, where I would speak my mind and say that was unjust and they were wrong and they were bad. No. And God reminded me of David. Like, I'm not the vindicator. My king is. And I don't get to expose everybody's stuff. The Lord will do that in his time. And it doesn't make it easy, because people will have ill thoughts of you sometimes because of maybe what someone was gossiping about or talked about that wasn't true. And maybe they have an awful perspective of you. I found that out years later, talking to a person about some situations that were very painful and wounding to me, what her perspective was of the whole thing, and way off from what the real story was. But how do we trust God to vindicate? How do we place that in his hands? What part of your life are you holding on to a past pain? And if we trust God, if we trust him even in today's circumstances, if we trust him to be in control, how do we walk that out? What does it look like today? Merciful God, please help me trust you to determine how justice prevails. Looks like that. That brings us into Jesus Calling. Sarah Young's book. You can download her app. You can order her book online. She writes from the perspective of God speaking to us. This is what today's says. Hold my hand and walk joyously with me through this day. Together we will savor the pleasures and endure the difficulties it brings. Be on the lookout for everything I have prepared for you. Stunning scenery, bracing winds of adventure, cozy nooks for resting when you are weary, and much more. I am your guide as well as your constant companion. I know every step of the journey ahead of you, all the way to heaven. You don't have to choose between staying close to me and staying on course. Since I am the way, staying close to me is staying on course. As you focus your thoughts on me, I will guide you carefully along today's journey. Don't worry about what is around the next bend. Just concentrate on enjoying my presence and staying in step with me. And that's today's piece of peace. Blessings.